Carlos Tavares, and he's even said, look, I was arrogant keeping our prices high.
And the UAW filing unfair labor practice charges against the company.
Stellantis has dropped a bomb. The hit intensifies as Jeep is in trouble, Ram is cutting production, and thousands of jobs are being lost. But that is not all there is to it. Stellantis is not just closing plants, it is revolutionizing its entire strategy. From the closure of emblematic factories to billion-dollar investments in EV gigafactories, they are either solving their future or digging their grave. But why would Stellantis make such a drastic move? Could this be a sign of a bigger shift in the auto industry, or is it a huge mistake? Let's take a closer look at what this decision really means for the future of Ram, Jeep, and the thousands of workers now caught in the middle. Stellantis' job cut. Ram and Jeep take a hit. Among the largest car manufacturers in the world, Stellantis has been making headlines with decisions that have hit hard across the American manufacturing industry. The main issue here is the discontinuation of Ram 1500 Classic production at the Warren Truck Assembly Plant in Michigan, a stalwart of automotive production. The Ram 1500 Classic, which has been in continuous production since the 2009 model year, is no longer in Stellantis' plans, and 1,100 jobs have vanished with it literally overnight. This is not just about a truck. This is about families, livelihoods, and whole communities that depend on these jobs to make ends meet. Stellantis continues to insist that this decision is part of the shift toward future-ready vehicles, a translation to more profitable models and electric vehicles as the industry moves into cleaner technology. As for the workers at Warren Truck, the explanation is of no help. Meanwhile, production of the Jeep Gladiator, considered Jeep's rugged off-road pickup, is reducing significantly at the Toledo South Assembly Plant in Ohio. The Gladiator has been hard-pressed to retain its momentum in 2024, with sales down as much as 21% this year alone. The shifts being cut by Stellantis leave another 1,100 workers in layoffs starting in January, as said by the company. This is devastating news for people on the factory floor. For many, this is generations of building Jeeps in Toledo, so it is more than just a job loss. It is a blow to legacy. So, why is Stellantis making these moves now? The company points to shifting market dynamics and high inventory levels as key drivers. Demand for traditional trucks and pickups has reduced, while competition across the automotive industry, especially from Ford and GM rivals, is intensifying. Dealers have been raising concerns as they are frustrated by pricing strategies that offer smaller discounts than competitors. Inflation has tightened car buyers' budgets, while better deals elsewhere have suppressed sales of Stellantis' trucks. At the same time, Stellantis is working its way through the huge transition over to electric vehicles. The company says it needs to scale back on older production in order to invest in emerging technology. This is part of the company's bigger plan for the future, but workers and their families are facing immediate hardships today. The affected workers will receive some benefits as union contracts guarantee supplemental unemployment and health coverage. However, these benefits will not take away all the anxiety about an uncertain future. These layoffs have impacts that reach far beyond the factories. Local businesses, suppliers, and entire towns built around the factories are preparing for economic challenges. Communities that have supported Stellantis' operations for decades now face the harsh reality of an uncertain future. Critics are asking themselves questions. Was there nothing to be done to avoid this? Nothing Stellantis could have done to save these plants, or at least cushion the blow for its employees. One thing is beyond doubt. Stellantis is making high-stakes moves trying to balance short-term challenges with long-term strategy. For the workers at Warren and Toledo, the price of that strategy feels all too real. Is it really just the economy, or is Stellantis shooting itself in the foot? Could this be a case of mismanagement, or is the market pressure just too much to handle? Let's dive into the tangled web of blame and see who really holds the cards in this high-stakes game. Who is at fault? Stellantis, dealers, or the market? That said, here is the real problem behind these job cuts. Now, the blame game begins. In this case, it goes onto the economy and the market conditions. Of course, the global economy is not fully stable, and competition is strong, to say the least. But is that the whole story? Or is Stellantis digging its own grave? It seems the dealers are insane. Top Ram and Jeep retailers are throwing their hands up in frustration. It seems Stellantis just cannot get this game going right. How come? Stellantis simply is not providing as many discounts and other incentives as its competitors have, with Ford and GM practically giving cars away because of these aggressive promotions. Just think about this. Buyers are out there, the prices of cars are high, and these dealerships are empty. Wherever buyers get a good deal, they run to that dealership and Stellantis. They struggle to meet the demand. These higher prices with fewer incentives are driving consumers toward Ford, GM, and even newer entrants, such as Tesla, who seem to know how to play the price game a little better. So, who is the real culprit here? The market? Or is Stellantis taking too long to adjust to the new situation? Enter the United Auto Workers Union. After months of hard-fought battles and contract negotiations, UAW workers secured better wages and benefits. But now Stellantis is making moves that are seriously testing those relationships. Plants that were supposed to reopen after contract ratifications are being delayed. Production shifts are being cut. What does that mean for the workers? You guessed it right. More layoffs. That means the tensions between the company and the workers are growing, and the latest layoffs added fuel to the fire. Do not even get me started on how slowly Stellantis has moved regarding electric vehicles. Yes, the company says it is focusing on the future, but is it too little or too late? Every manufacturer is already committed to electric vehicles, and Stellantis is still dragging its feet. While they are still trying to figure out what their EV strategy is, competitors like Ford and GM have already rolled out new electric models with amazing new tech that buyers cannot resist. What is the real issue here? Was Stellantis just getting beat up by the shifting car market, high prices, and tough competition? Or is it their failure to move fast enough to the future? They are clearly behind on the EV front, and their internal troubles are starting to show. All of this resulted in huge layoffs and production cuts. Here is the catch. Stellantis is still making big moves. They have big plans to develop and change their strategy. Now, before I get into that, do you think Stellantis is moving in the right direction? Can they repair the tension with their dealers and workers? More importantly, can they make up ground for electric vehicles? Drop your thoughts below. Next up, let us talk about some bold new moves into gigafactories that may change the game at Stellantis. Stellantis' billion-dollar EV battery gamble. Interestingly, Stellantis is making some good moves in the electric vehicle world while having to work on some major challenges back home. While the company has moved toward layoffs and plant closures in the United States, it is fully committed to large investments in EV batteries in Europe. And by large, I mean a €4.1 billion investment. Stellantis is partnering with CATL, one of the largest players in electric car batteries, to build a gigafactory in Zaragoza, Spain. It will produce 50 kilograms of batteries per year. In other words, up to almost 700,000 vehicles daily. Now, that is a bold move. This is not just a question of the size of the investment. It also helps explain why both Stellantis and the future of electric cars in Europe have so much at stake in the success of the facility. It is expected to start the construction process in 2025, and by 2028, it will be operating at full capacity, producing over 1 million batteries in a year. If ambitious is a word, this it is. Another exciting thing is that it is designed to be completely carbon neutral. That is right, Stellantis is going green, and this factory will be key to helping the company meet its sustainability goals, including becoming a net zero carbon corporation by 2038. Why Spain? Well, Spain has a pretty strong presence already in the automotive industry, besides a growing focus on renewable energy and competitive labor costs. The Gigafactory will lead to the creation of as many as 3,000 jobs, apart from many hundreds of local suppliers, resulting in a big boost for the regional economy of Zaragoza. It's not bad for the company that, not long ago, people said it would never find its footing, right? Where Stellantis is doubling down on Europe's EV future, things are a bit less rosy stateside. Let us be realistic. The company is not in the best place when it comes to public reputation in the States at this time. Stellantis has cut thousands of jobs, shuttered several plants, and is wearing a black eye from being so late to the EV game. Meanwhile, its competitors, such as Ford and GM, have gotten into high gear with the continuous launch of electric car models to the market. On the other hand, Stellantis appears to be somewhat playing catch-up compared to most of its competitors who are charging forward. So, is this large investment in Spain they are trying to bounce back? Could be. This whole move to Europe could be part of a bigger strategic shift in which Stellantis is all but betting that Europe would lead the way in EV adoption. Or it is the company's way of saving face to get ahead in the EV race while its US operations catch up. In any case, it is crystal clear that Stellantis is placing a very big bet on the future of electric vehicles. But the big question is, will it pay off? Can Stellantis recover from their US struggles? Or is this just another costly misstep? Is Stellantis making a smart move by betting big on EV batteries in Europe? Or are they just trying to save face after all the drama back in the States? Who knows? We shall live to see, since nothing is hidden under the sun. As Stellantis puts all its chips on EV success, its moves are stirring the pot, not just in Europe, but also in the UK. Could this factory closure be the tipping point for the future of car manufacturing in Britain? Vauxhall plant closure, a crisis that hit the UK. Stellantis has again sent shockwaves across the UK's automotive sector with the closure of the Vauxhall van-making plant in Luton, with more than 1,100 jobs at risk. This is not just a factory closure, but an immediate attack on the employees and their families who depend on it. It also throws up serious questions about the future of car manufacturing in Britain, and whether the ambitious transition to electric vehicles is coming too quickly for the industry to catch up. What exactly led Stellantis to arrive at this decision? According to the company, it all comes down to the tough EV sales quotas set by the UK government. The government is using an electoral club to make sure great portions of all manufacturers' vehicle sales are electric, with giant fines called out on whoever is unable to get to those. There is a problem here. EV demand has not caught on yet in the UK, and Stellantis simply is not able to keep pace, despite all hope of greener vehicles and driving for zero emissions when infrastructure just does not grow with that promise. Consequently, Stellantis is pulling the plug on the Luton plant, a move that draws sharp criticism. Let us turn to the role of the UK government in all this. Critics say it is not doing enough to protect its own auto industry. Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds has been accused of being behind the curve, even though he had early discussions with Stellantis about the situation. It had announced its closure in November. Based on the timing, the government was too late to intervene. With that commitment shown towards the auto industry at such a massive shift towards EVs, questions about whether the government has forgotten to support industries that are supposed to be the force for environmental goals are not surprising. This is not just a problem for Stellantis. Consider the entire automotive sector. It is expected to set the UK economy ablaze because of the zero-emission vehicle mandate imposed on car makers by the government, which calls for 80% of car sales to be electric by 2030. This is in the move toward a greener environment, but at the same time, it puts much pressure on manufacturers who are finding it hard to meet that target. Ford, Honda, and Jaguar Land Rover have already cut or stopped UK production for the same reasons. The Luton closure represents another chapter in the unfolding saga of the UK auto industry to keep pace with ambitious government plans. But it is not all negative. There are discussions about changing the rules. The UK government does contemplate some relaxation in its objectives concerning EV sales, making them achievable. These may include permitting hybrid cars to remain in the market until 2035 and a reduction in fines on manufacturers who cannot achieve the quota of sales. This will help smooth the transition for car makers and consumers and give them time to adapt to the new EV landscape. It now makes sense that Stellantis decided to shut down the Vauxhall plant in Luton because of the harsh reality of electric transition. It is a bitter pill to swallow, especially for the 3,000 people who stand to lose their jobs. The latest move raises questions about whether the UK's timeline to go green is realistic. Even so, everything such as transitioning to pure EV requires both the supporting will of the government and its consumers. Now we want to hear from you. Do you really feel the UK government is trying to go too fast with these EV quotas? Is this all part of the needed long game? We are all on this journey together towards a greener future, and your voice matters. With these harsh new EU emissions rules looming, can Stellantis handle the pressure, or will they stall out? As the clock ticks down, the stakes have never been higher. Let's see if their bold moves can steer them clear of disaster, or if this might be the moment they hit a roadblock. Stellantis' bold move in light of European emission rules. Here comes Stellantis putting pedal to the metal in the biggest of ways, and many are not entirely convinced whether they will be able to cross the line without crashes. Starting this January, The European Union is setting a tight screw with car makers already starting to sweat it out. New rules on emissions could be enforced on factories that compel the car manufacturing firms to record at least 20% of sales in a year consisting of electric vehicles. Failure to do that can result in huge fines being put on them. In this framework, if we talk or discuss volume sales in automobiles, currently only 13% of vehicles sold in European countries are electric, suggesting the necessity of enforcing a hard new policy and making car makers urgently make another tough decision together. For Stellantis, which owns a number of brands like Jeep, Ram, and Peugeot, the pressure is on to ensure that they are meeting these targets. How do they plan to avoid those penalties and keep their profits rolling in? Well, they have some approach, but here is where it gets tricky. On one hand, Stellantis wants to raise the prices for conventional gas-powered cars in order to force customers toward EVs. On the other side, higher prices on gas-powered vehicles could actually push them away, especially in a market where competitors like Ford and Volkswagen are offering better deals. Instead of turning toward EVs, some buyers might decide it is easier to go elsewhere for a more reasonably priced gas car. That means Stellantis is losing customers on both sides. Fewer people are buying gas cars, and fewer are willing to give EVs a shot because they are relatively expensive. Conversely, Stellantis lowers the prices of EVs with a pretty steep discount on their electric line to make them more affordable. That balance might shift. I think so. They are pricier up front, and Stellantis hopes that by making them more accessible, more buyers will fall into the electric fold. Of course, this move, too, has its problems. Cutting prices on EVs might entice buyers, but could reduce Stellantis's profit margins. We all know EVs are not cheap to make, and too many discounts might have an effect on Stellantis's ability to maintain profitability while transitioning its entire fleet to electric. It is a tricky game. Stellantis walks a tightrope trying to keep both gas-powered and electric cars in its lineup while playing catch-up to make the EU's emissions quotas. The car makers would not like to raise gas car prices by too much, lest they lose their customer base to their competitors. At the same time, they would not want to cut EV prices aggressively in order not to hurt the bottom line. Of course, they are convinced they could raise EV sales and reduce the cost, but they are possibly over-risking in cases when there is no noticeable change in demand for electric vehicles expected in the coming year or so. With the pricing strategy being bold, Stellantis is not sitting around doing nothing. Huge investments are also being made in EV infrastructure. They have partnered with Chinese battery giant CATL to build a €4.1 billion gigafactory in Zaragoza, Spain, which will produce 50 gigafactories of batteries annually from 2025. By 2028, the factory will be in full swing, producing over 1 million EV batteries a year. This would translate to 3,000 jobs and hundreds of local suppliers, a big investment for Stellantis in its increase of electric car production. While this might be giving some hope, it is yet to be seen if Stellantis will actually be able to deliver these plans without taking some sort of hit to its bottom line. Will this high-risk and high-reward strategy from Stellantis actually pay off? Is this EU-imposed rule on emissions the problem that caused everything to collapse? Between a rise in prices on the company's traditional cars and discounts for EVs amid pouring billions into the manufacturing of more, this can be termed a dangerous game. A risk they have clearly resolved to take. One thing is clear: the next few years might favor them. Can Stellantis steer its way through this upcoming rocky road, or is it about to watch its gamble totally backfire? Stellantis' software revolution, driving into the digital future. Prepare yourselves, because this time, Stellantis goes headfirst into the future, and they are not just making cars, they are making computers on wheels. You have heard it right. Huge Stellantis is betting everything on software as a way to completely change how you and I interact with our vehicles. These are not fancy touchscreen and tech buzzwords. No, Stellantis is doing some real work here. They will pull in an extra €20 billion in revenues every single year by the year 2030. Let us check what this software revolution is all about, and why it might just prove to be the most humble approach Stellantis took. How about we begin by meeting the brains behind the operation? The STLA brain. Stellantis has designed the platform to be the central nervous system of every vehicle. Think of it like having a smartphone for your car, only much smarter. Why? Because it fully supports over-the-air updates. That means your vehicle can improve over time without you ever stepping foot inside a dealership. One day, one wakes up to a world where car features are a bit more modern, the driving system is a lot more economical, or the entertainment systems have all been upgraded, all with just a digital update. No muss, no fuss. It is a game changer, and Stellantis knows it. How about the inside? That is when the car turns into the STLA Smart Cockpit. By this time, Stellantis goes beyond mechanics, plunging into user experiences as it has never tried before. Just imagine getting into your car, and it knows who you are. It is learning your habits, your preferences, what kind of music you like, and which roads you like to take. You get a hyper-personal experience fueled by artificial intelligence. This tiny assistant that knows even before you say what exactly you want. The smart cockpit integrates fun. And now it is time to make a place for STLA Auto Drive and comfort to such an extent that driving is just less of a chore. Stellantis is not doing it alone. It is partnering with tech giants like Amazon to create a cloud-based infrastructure that undergirds this digital magic. And for the prospects of driving into a rosy future, Stellantis does plan for it. Now, it is time to make a place for STLA Auto Drive. Stellantis has put much effort into bringing in both Level 2 and Level 3 autonomous driving capabilities. Translation: that means your car can take over most of your driving on highways and even handle tricky situations with minimal input. This is no longer science fiction, but it is a fact that Stellantis wants to launch by 2024. They are smart about it, partnering with companies like Waymo that have been in the game of autonomous driving for years. This is where things get even more interesting. Stellantis is not leaving this to chance. They are investing heavily in their own talent pool. By the end of 2024, Stellantis wants to have 4,500 software engineers on the payroll. They are bringing in an army of digital workers to make sure this transformation happens in-house. This is not about keeping up with the competition, but getting ahead of it. With their own engineers in the driver's seat in the design and fine-tuning of these systems, Stellantis is positioning itself squarely at the forefront of the field of software-driven cars. We can talk about why they are doing this. The automotive industry keeps moving at such a fast pace. All of a sudden, these traditional automakers found themselves being attacked, and most companies, like Tesla, proved that your software could make or break car makers' fortunes. Of course, Stellantis knows it just cannot lag behind. With a software-defined vehicle strategy, Stellantis positions itself to sell cars that will only improve over their lifetimes, be filled with value, and continue generating revenue beyond the initial sale. Subscriptions, in-car features, and pay-as-you-go programs all become their own driving experiences. Vehicles become the platform that would be continuously reinvented. You're probably asking yourself if the plan will work. The plan is quite bold for Stellantis, but where there is bold, there are challenges. Making cutting-edge software and fitting it seamlessly into cars takes not only time, but a heck of a lot of money and brainpower. It does not help that competitors are waiting for every turn. In some way, every automaker is racing toward an advantage in this software-driven world. Is Stellantis realistically ahead of the curve, or just lagging? Are we ready for cars that are more like rolling smartphones? Will people subscribe to the features, or will they hesitate to pay extra for digital bells and whistles? Whether Stellantis succeeds here has to do not just with its technology, but with how well it sells this vision to everyday drivers like you and me. So, what does that all spell for the future of Stellantis? All in one line, they are going big for technology. From over-the-air updates to AI-driven cockpits and autonomous driving, it seems Stellantis wants to actually reimagine what it takes to own a car, and if they can pull it off, they are not just going to make it through this industry shift, but instead lead it. This cannot go without a twist. This is not a Stellantis story alone. This forms part of a much larger tapestry in the auto world. As cars continue to move toward being basically software, the industry in 5 to 10 years is going to be unrecognizable. Stellantis is making its move now, and the stakes could not be higher. What is your take on this? Are you thrilled about having cars updated like your smartphone and doing the driving for you? Or are you a little apprehensive that such a future is going to be a bit too techy? The bottom line here is that at the end of the day, Stellantis is putting their money where their mouth is. Their software revolution is not an option. It is a point of survival. Whether they come out on top or stub their toes, one thing is clear. The battle for the future of cars is now official, and Stellantis is not pulling back. Can Stellantis bounce back? The big question here is, what is the future of Stellantis? It is uncertain at the moment. Layoffs are piled upon layoffs, the closing of plants not being left behind, and let us not even talk about the poor performance of its brands that once used to be American muscle and blood, such as Ram and Jeep. For the Gladiator alone, Jeep's sales dropped 21% this year, while ditches pulling the plug on the Ram 1500 Classic would seem more to their own body blow. The communities are in shock. Workers have grown frustrated, and criticisms from critics could not grow loud enough. Wait a minute. This is not all of Stellantis' story. Behind the chaos, there is a big shift underway. Billions are being poured into electric vehicle production and gigafactories, which are full of it across Europe, in a race to strict emission targets with eyes locked on the future of EVs. Despite that, it is still lagging behind the giants, namely Ford, GM, and Tesla in the EV game. Tesla's domination is a tale told. The electric F-150 from Ford is turning heads everywhere, and GM is pushing forward with new models and rather bold incentives. This news puts the pressure on Stellantis. Can they change faster and bring more affordable EVs to market? That is the big question. Price is still a huge barrier to entry for most buyers, but without a clear route to make EVs accessible, Stellantis is in danger of falling further behind. Add in the tension with workers and dealers, and it is not an easy ride ahead. Here is the thing. This is Stellantis we are talking about. They have survived tough times before, and they are betting big on a future they hope will pay off. Will Stellantis fold, or will they rise to meet this moment? For certain, the stakes have never been higher, and we are witnessing history. What is the verdict on Stellantis? Is Stellantis making the right moves with their EV investments? Can they recover from the layoffs and plant shutdowns, or are brands like Ram and Jeep on the verge of becoming extinct? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Keep your curiosity alive.